This is usually one of the most interesting sessions of our summits. It's a tradition at our summits that we bring in the people who are responsible for producing the talent that comes into our construction management professions. And we ask them various questions about that pipeline, and we see if there are ways that we could work together to ease the supply of people into that pipeline. I have a list of questions over here that we had, just a guide, and what we're going to do is we're going to have the panel members discuss items, and perhaps we could hold our questions to the end. So please take notes if there are any questions that you need to ask after we've had a panel discussion, then you can feel free to pop in and ask the questions that you want to ask. The first thing that you notice about our panel, of course, is that it is, what is that? 1 out of 8 of them is a woman. Okay. So again, women are underrepresented. So let me go off the script here and start by asking, as the host, Dr. Mr. Ansari, what's the challenge with getting more women into lecturing positions in our universities? What's the viscosity?
I think the first thing is the pay. I think women are reluctant to come and teach or lecture because I think the money is the problem. That's the first thing. Of course, it's a quite a tedious job nowadays. Marking, research, pressures of research, outputs. UJ's move 4% globally. So there are challenges, and like I said, it's probably the pay, and of course, maybe we need to market the profession, or get people into our industry to come and teach. Because I struggle to get a QS to come and teach during the day. It's impossible. Evening is fine. But we need to attract more women. And UJ, we just had a sit down with our Vice Dean Teaching and Learning and our DVC academic about 2 weeks ago, talking about we need to look at equity, we need to look at women, bring more females in. So our university is looking at equity quite vigorously.
Have any of you been successful in that regard?
We were very lucky. I mean, this is a big problem because if you look at the profile of academics in South Africa, in our built environment field, a lot of them foreign like myself, and that may be a reason why it's actually easier for, and unfortunately it's true, that a man, academic, might make it easier to transform, move their family over here than get a woman academic to be able to achieve the same thing. So that's unfortunately a cultural problem. We've had a fair degree of success, not necessarily in appointing senior academics, but that's a problem across the board. But we managed to secure some funding through CETA for 4 associate lecturer posts. And we managed to fill all of those with women. And one of them's actually sitting over there. So it is possible. The issue really is that to get into academia now, you need a PhD, and that's a non-negotiable. And the funding for PhDs for local candidates is extremely difficult to find. And unless someone like the CETA is going to stump up 400,000 rand a year plus some research funds to appoint an associate lecturer who's going to work predominantly on their PhD for the next 3 years, and is therefore not really going to contribute significantly to teaching. The universities can't carry that themselves. We actually need external funding for that. I've got people lined up, females lined up, wanting to do their PhDs, wanting to move into academic posts. What I don't have is the funding to be able to support them through that first 3 years. But then I can get them into an academic post.
Dr. Bimbola, you get to comment.
In terms of, at UCT, I think we have 50% female academics to 50% male. So we are quite balanced in terms of female academics at UCT. So I don't really want to agree with Mr. Asari that it's because of money. I don't want to see money as the reason why we don't have female academics. I think maybe it's because of the support you need, because the work-life balance and the life of an academic is quite stressful, because you have these goals that are not well defined. You don't have defined goals, and you don't know how to achieve them. So if you don't have that support from the university system, it might be impossible for you to succeed as an academic. So I would just want to say that UCT is quite supportive of females, and they provide this support to encourage women in academics. So maybe that's why it has been easy for UCT to grow the female academic base compared to other universities.
I just want to make a contribution. At CUT, we have more female in my department than male. You may say it's out of the ordinary, but it's not. It ties with what Professor Bim has just mentioned. It's about work balance, and if the leadership is able to actually strike a balance, consider the different needs of the female. Then if you get them young and endeavor to provide the resources to get them trained, which is what Professor Wood is saying, then they will be more encouraged to stay on.
Maybe then let's talk a bit more about the people that you're producing then as academics. And, excuse me. I think it's a fair, we've heard it in the last few summits that, and a complaint from most, especially contractors, that what you're producing as students is not suitable for the market. And there's always a harkening back to the good old days when graduates were graduates and they were work ready and they were able to hit the ground running, but now you have to mollycoddle them and so on. Sticking with you, Professor Muse, is our curriculum, is it ready enough to, can you produce graduates that are work ready? Can we say that we are actually producing work ready graduates able to hit the ground running?
To a large extent, I speak for CUT, I think yes, because most of our programs have got a WIP component, and perhaps the advantage that we have is we are in Bloemfontein, we're a smaller university. We work with industry partners that have been with us for quite a long time, and most of our students are able to go out when they are supposed to go out. And most importantly, it is curriculum renewal. The construction of today is not the construction of 20, 30 years ago. What are you teaching them? Let's take a very typical example. The world, the developed world, so to speak, are in on sustainability, they are in on BIM. Is that being reflected in what we are teaching them? When you produce a student and it goes out and it doesn't even know what BIM is, how do you expect what's it called now, the employer to be satisfied? So there has to be a two-way traffic between what is expected and what is being delivered.
Mr. Wenzel, to your point?
Thank you, Chair. I concur with Professor Muse, as I feel that CPT does, in our program, we do have a lot of, we do have the practical component. So it's been coming on for some time now. It's been part of the program all the time. We've also obviously implemented in the program the integrated projects at first year level, which covers the extended program at first year, and obviously the mainstream students. We have service learning programs or parts of the modules, which allow students at first year level already to link up with industry. So with the new curriculum, with the recalculation on our new diploma, our in-service training, so to say, would take place at third year level, if obviously implemented from next year. Currently, it is done in the second year. So I would say from our side, we are really getting the students, we're trying our best to prepare the students from our side, and obviously to link them with industry. And we're trying our best to be innovative in terms of the new trends and the new developments, obviously with what the industry requires from us.
Chris, would you like to add to that?
I think if we look at what we try to do is we actually try to get feedback from the employers. So we know that our graduates are getting snapped up before they even finish. That's across both streams. And we need to try, we try and get some feedback then from those who are employing those individuals as to whether they actually are meeting up to the standards that are expected. And if they're not, where we need to improve, and then we try to bring that into our program. But generally, I think the feedback has been pretty positive. I think the feedback is because they keep coming back and keep taking our students every year. And then, as I said, it's across the board. So it doesn't matter if it's a building student in the BTEC course or if it's a construction management student. And also a third year. We lose a lot of our students at third year. So we obviously must be doing something correct.
So why is there this perception, Professor Tekelkapa, why is there this perception that, and I'm not sure if there are many people who have employed CM graduates, show of hands, quick show of hands, recently? Did you find them work ready? So why is there that perception, Professor?
The perception, yes. I think there must be a misunderstanding, if I may use the word, because you see, the university and the industry have got two roles to play. The university is supposed to train and prepare the students for industry. And therefore, it will be a bit difficult to expect a graduate who's just come from the university to hit the road running. And if, again, you find that different companies, they have their own cultures within the organization. They may be doing things in a different way. And therefore, there has to be some kind of a training in the industry to mold these guys so that they can be more relevant to the organization in which they find themselves in. So, yes, to some extent, yes. If you look at the two streams of education, which more or less focuses on theoretical teaching, then you find that when it comes to practical application, there's some kind of limitation for the graduates who come from universities that are more theoretically oriented. The technology-oriented university graduates, they have already an exposure in the industry, and some of the criticism may be much less because these guys have been working in the university while working and studying and so on. So you find that there's a bit of a difference. And it's up to the industry to decide what graduate they want for a particular task they may have in the industry.
So bluntly put, you're saying BTECs are better than bachelors?
Not necessarily. What I'm saying is that in a company will have different tasks within its organization. Probably, just to give you an example, say a construction company. You may need somebody who's in the office, who can conceptualize things, write reports, and so on. And you find that a person who is more theoretically oriented will be more suitable for that kind of task. And if you want somebody who can go to site and organize construction and so on, there will be a different, you find that somebody will have more strengths. For example, the BTEC person will be more inclined to dealing with practical application immediately. So what I'm saying is that there is there's no argument about one is better than the other. It's a question of how the employer would say, I've got this product, and this is how I can utilize this particular product for the benefit of the organization.
Mr. Badman, it would be interesting to hear your view on this too.
Good afternoon. I'm Achima Tumani from Waters Sulu, as it was said. First, I would like to start to talk from the perspective of university of technology that produces technicians, not BTECs. We're not there yet. We don't produce BTECs. We produce just the ordinary technicians, that is a 3-year diploma. Our students go for training after finishing the first year. When they go there, most of the times they are just accepted just to help them, not expecting to get anything from them. As a result, in most cases, they will work for nothing. But as the longer they stay in, the months that they spend in the workplace, the industry understands them and they see what they can get from them. When they go back to the school, to school again, you'll find that the employment that has taken them before would like them to come back. So in other words, is the understanding between the university and the industry. That is very, very important. After we have strengthened our, as Walter Sisulu, after we have strengthened our collaboration with the industry, only then our students were more needed in the industry. So long as the industry stands alone and the university stands alone, we will never bridge the gap. We need to come together as the industry and the universities so that we can understand each other and we can inform each other. We as academics need to inform the industry what we do at the university, what is expected of us as the university. And you as the industry need to tell us what you get, what you need from our students, what you don't get and what you are getting. That's the gap that is there in our industry. Thank you.
Just wondering then if that happens as often as it should. Are you interacting with industry the way you should be? And that interaction, Professor Musa talked about curriculum changes and getting them and developing curriculums that are relevant. For example, BIM. Are you talking to industry about things like that? Are you asking them, is this what you want produced? And considering the way it's difficult to change a curriculum and the schlep that goes with that, how easy is it then to change a curriculum every 3 or 4 years because the demands change that often? Okay.
So just to touch on the area again, with CPUT we do have an industry advisory board or committee, which is obviously chaired by the co-op representative within our department as well. So we do get industry, individuals that come from industry that sit on the board that advise us in terms of what they expect our students to attain before they leave our institution. For example, let's take the Candy system for the QS students. I don't know if it's still Candy or WinQS that they use outside, but WinQS. A lot of the contractors, they actually want our students to be quite adequate with that program before they leave. Because they, like I said, they hit the ground running on site. We are obviously technical. The students do have the know-how and the practical exposure already. But they struggle with the computer programs in terms of, checking your measurements on the program, printing out or obviously financial reports and all those things. So a lot of technological advances in terms of the QS profession, that's where they're obviously advising us in terms of getting our students ready for the programs as such. Because our students can measure, they can obviously manage or supervise small teams on site. They are capable of that. They don't have problems with those things. It's just the technological parts or components of the QS stream that's always been a bit of a, they still go into industry and they need to be trained on these programs. And that is the setback on the QS side, I think.
I don't believe that a university can be able to produce a ready manager for the, a ready contract manager. A contract manager grows from go up the ranks. from measuring and doing the little things on site, then grow. Use the skill that you were taught at school, but you cannot come from school straight to be a manager. So the technicians that we produce, they get from the bottom and they grow up the ladder. So that is the way I think is best for our industry.
Moving on to a somewhat different issue, which seems a bit related to this, and Prof, let me ask Prof. Ruth to come in here. Resourcing then, to do all these things, you do need resources in your departments, you need funding, you need facilities, equipment. You'll never have enough, of course, but are we adequately funded and resourced as construction management departments?
In short, no. We are overworked. We are required to take in more and more students. The Fees Must Fall has put another huge burden on us that we're all facing. I'm sitting with a first-year intake in my construction studies program this year of 200, okay? Which, for those of you who were at university some time ago, you will realize is significantly greater than what you had when you were there. And the increase in resources has not kept pace with that. We simply do not have the resources because you're now reaching a point where in order to do these things like have Candy and Revit and Navisworks and God knows what other software that we're required to use, you need the dedicated computer facilities for that, you need the infrastructure, you need the space, and most of our space is still designed as if we're teaching chalk and talk in most of the universities, and that's not the space that actually we need to teach in these sorts of programs. We need much more flexible, problem-based learning suited space, and we don't have the physical infrastructure to do that. The heads of forum meeting on Monday, I think they put up some figures regarding applications that have gone in support of SIPs and strategically important professions, and the SACP-CMP is motivating with various other funders to try and get money into the professions. I know from a fact that I put in a bid to say we need 25 million, seriously, to actually sort out the problems within my school. That means buildings, that means everything else. To finish off what we need, to train the people we need, to provide support to the academics, to provide the bursaries, to provide the infrastructure, to actually provide a high-quality education. No, we're not well resourced.
Chris, you're holding back towards that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is obviously the number increase. So where before you may have had 15 to 20 students, you now got 70 to 80 students. So you still have only one lecturer for those 70 to 80 students. But at the same time, we're trying to cover more areas, so you have to do the research aspects as well. And all of that obviously is being constrained by the likes of the zero fees increase. So we're having to do more with less in that respect as well. So if you add all of that up, you're in deficit.
What does that mean for me as a student?
It means you're going to get less contact time. It means you're going to get not as good service. That's what it means, bottom line. Not that universities will want to talk about that, because they just expect the lecturers to do more time. But if you just work it out in terms of face time, if I give 80 students 5 minutes of my time, work that out, versus 30 students 5 minutes of my time. I mean, my numbers have gone up to over 400. It's just physically impossible to actually sit down with every single student, and you're going to therefore have a problem in terms of contact time. And that's where the majority of the time goes. And these students want instant response. You're on email, they want you on other platforms to actually reply immediately. So yeah, that is a big, big challenge.
Mr. Ansari, I get the feeling that you've got a very big cohort in your department. Is that the same problem?
Yeah, we do. We have large numbers. Hashtag Fees Must Fall is putting lots of pressure on us. Yeah, and of course research. I mean, it's a third stream income. So we are forced to do research. And as I said, it's a third stream income to the university. We produced 66 units of research last year, which is income to the university split between the researcher and the faculty. So yeah, there is constraints with regards to everything. And finding people to teach, that's the problem. I mean, I've asked for 20 million, which I was told it's a wish list. But we needed to upskill the current staff that we have to get, PhDs, and of course to bring people on board. And again, once, as Professor Winterpool said, that she don't think it's money. I still think I have that experience that when you engage somebody, you say, female, what is the salary? What is the scale? I don't disclose the scale. What is the scale? What are you earning now? I earn more than that in industry. Waste my time. So that's the kind of thing that I experienced. Trying to get women in. But we have to grow our own timber. We need to get people in on board. And university has a system. We have assistant PhDs who come in. We employ them as assistant lecturers. So we're trying to sort of mitigate, bring those people on board.
Dr. Inapo, I remember there was a lot of controversy some time back about construction management disciplines being marginalized at universities. And does that apply in terms of resources? Is it just something that has been exaggerated? Are we getting less than we should because other departments have a louder voice than we probably should?
Yes, I think the CM or the construction program is being marginalized at universities because of our standing. Universities usually look at your standing, even as an academic. You need to have that standing in the university to attract funds. So let's say at the University of Cape Town, the Faculty of Health Sciences, they have a very good standing, and maybe they generate a lot of income from research and from research contracts, and also from government subvention through writing of research articles. So the university also looks at a business case. They look at how much are they getting from this department. So if the department is not generating enough income in terms of what the university thinks is enough, then that department tends to be marginalized in the university. And that's what's happening to construction management program. We don't have support, we don't have industry support in terms of research contracts with staff, we don't have things like that coming through. So it's a big problem for us and makes us look small to the university.
Let me pick up on that thread a bit. Research. Okay. What would you be researching about? I think Mr. Costa, before in the presentation before tea, pointed out that the pyramids were built, there were tall buildings, 7,000 years ago, and there was underfloor heating 1,000 years ago. So what's new? What are we going to be researching in construction? We've been building the same things all over since time immemorial.
There are new things because as society advances, so there are new areas we have to look at. So although we are still using that kind of additive methods of construction, we really do need to start looking at new ways of building that like we have the 3D printers now. So moving away from addition, maybe into subtraction or things like that. So universities need to continue pushing the boundaries of knowledge, what we know and what we don't know, how we could ensure that our processes and our practices are better. So, but the industry feels these challenges because we don't work in the industry. So is the industry supposed to come to the university and say, we have this contract for you, why don't you research into this area for us? So that's how universities grow, and that's how lecturers also grow, departments or academic, or the knowledge, that's how it grows. But in the construction industry, we don't have this type of interaction. What you find in medicine, you don't usually find it in construction. We don't have the interaction with the departments. We don't know what their problems are. We don't know what the challenges are. So those are part of the things that we need support for.
Would anyone like to add to that? Professor Talikoba?
I just want to mention that the marginalization may not necessarily be because of the construction management. If we take the example of TUT, we have enough students
between QS and construction management. The marginalization comes from the allocation of funds from the university. We find that our department produces more funds through the admission and graduation. But when the subsidy comes, our share is taken to other departments, architecture and electrical engineering. Now, we've made a lot of noise about this, and of course, they are now beginning to understand that if they continue doing that, then it is going to make life difficult for us. But in terms of research, it is actually very limited. The main challenge is, of course, for staff to be involved in research. Of course, they have to have the skills to be researchers. They must have PhDs, or they could be in a higher degree, and have connection with industry so that they can get funding for research. And we find that these links are not very much available for the staff, as well as the skills that they may have. So there is a huge challenge of how you can produce researchers, especially in construction management, and also to have the incentives that people can have interest in research. It's a big challenge. So personally, the process is to encourage young students who are doing very well, to encourage them to do higher degrees, and then we see whether we can also appoint them, which is also another problem, and then they get involved in research.
Sorry, George, if I can pick up, maybe I want to do the politician thing from last night and throw it out there and say, who here has an R&D budget for their construction company? And what kind of percentages are you actually spending on R&D? I went to a conference last year, one material supplier working with one institution in the United Kingdom spending £300,000 on R&D. That's just one. They were working with about 10 to 12 different organizations, all spending over £100,000 with them. So in terms of an income stream, that's a massive income stream for the university. I hardly see any R&D happening in terms of construction in this country whatsoever. We've got lots of problems in the industry, but nobody seem to want to solve them or put their money where their mouth is. And I think that's one of the big challenges that we have to try and overcome. We have to get industry to actually invest in research and development. We're working at the moment with Rhodesa. Those are the people who are taxing the tyre manufacturers to recycle their tyres. So we're looking at the use of those tyres in the construction industry in a variety of forms. That's a research-based project with one master student, funding 100,000 Rand. We need 20 of those for the students that we've got in terms of the research that we want to do, but don't have funding to do. And that makes a huge difference in terms of getting more graduates through and getting some of those graduates also in to come and become lecturers. So it has added benefits all the way through the business of the institution. But government is not going to provide that money, particularly with the zero fees increase and the rest. So we have to look at elsewhere, and these are the individuals we need to be talking to. Your companies need to invest.
Yeah, I didn't get a response from that. Who has a research and development budget amongst any of these organizations? You have your answer there, right? There's your answer. Okay, so if we can't get research funding from the government, because fees must fall, and we can't get it from the public, or rather the private sector, because, well, they're not interested. How do we fund it? How do we increase it? What's next? What's the option?
NRF is normally one of the ways we get funding. Of course, you have to be rated researcher, but there's lots of red tape. just the bureaucracy.
Also, third stream income. I think one of the areas that the universities are all getting much more conscious and aware of is providing additional training, whether that's UPD, executive training, short courses, whatever it happens to be. And there's a huge demand out there. And the trouble we have is that actually that then requires the lecturers to also lecture again, and that generates more demand on them and so on. But I don't see any money coming from anywhere particularly. I remember the CIDB putting out and say they were going to have centres of excellence and stuff. They did actually sign and deliver with the NMMU. They didn't even get to signing with us of it. They called out, I think, 2 days before the signing ceremony, and that was it. They had a plan. They were going to invest heavily in the universities. Never happened. So the universities are running around scrabbling to find what they can. And it doesn't require huge sums of money. We don't necessarily require big labs to bend beams and do that. Engineering does, we don't. But we do actually need to provide more than 40,000 rands to a master's student trying to do a full-time master's dissertation. We do actually need them to be able to live, have a roof over their head, and have food on the table if you're expecting them to actually pursue a master's degree.
Then I'll come back to you too, Professor Telekova.
Just to add on what has been said about funding research, practically there's no funding from the private sector, as has been mentioned, but we tend to become a bit creative since 2015, in line with what Dave was saying. We use money for our third stream income, which is the trainings we'll be offering, and more or less the money is coming directly from government, because most of our trainings are offered to provincial government or municipality. So you separate a particular percentage for your research. That way you can at least have something going apart from the NRF, which is more or less the sole provider of research funding for almost every one of us. Another way that we're becoming a bit creative is to find partners abroad that have got similar problems that you are doing. I was at that forum in Leeds that Chris referred to. It's quite sorry when you realize that you are in a country where money for R&D is pouring into the university, and you are here, and nothing is coming through. So we have to be sort of become creative, using the vehicles of creating a unit or a research center that will have multiple ways of engaging with the industry.
Before then, we turn this back to the crowd. You talk about innovation and how to deliver, innovation and how to get income and to deliver programs. I go into the internet now and I can actually do a course that was done by MIT. I get MIT courses online, and Khan Academy gives courses online. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we looking for alternative ways of delivering programs, and that then can generate funds for us?
We are, but the online model is expensive. The figures that we're playing around with, and we're working through someone called, with an outfit called Digital Campus, is it's about 600,000 rand per module to get the stuff done and get it up onto that sort of infrastructure. Where does that money come from? It's a real issue. I think we do have to be a lot more flexible. We've been talking about short courses, but I think, and the numbers of students coming through, I think one of the things we're missing quite significantly is the people already in the industry who still want qualifications. Not a short course, want a qualification, and we do not provide models for that to do. We look and say where our kids are coming from matric, and we talk today and yesterday about making it more attractive. There are a lot of people who've come in by accident into the construction industry. Maybe they're sitting in client organizations, they don't have a built environment background, but there's no way that they can pick up those qualifications unless they're going to give up their job for 3 years of work full-time. Free State did have a part-time program, but nobody's done it. We've just introduced a quantity surveying part-time this year. We're going to extend it to construction management to our honours next year, so we're going to offer our honours in construction management from next year. The reality is we want to aim that at BTECs, to give them the chance to progress on. But what about people who didn't have a BTEC, maybe had a national diploma or did a BCom or something like that? How do they become a construction manager? How do they get a qualification? we need to actually be offering a lot more part-time programs and flexible learning that people can actually lead to real qualifications. And that could be an income stream for us. That could be a significant income stream for all of us.
Right, I think innovative ways to raise funds, of course, it requires investment, because if we are already strained with funding, then we are already constrained in terms of being more innovative. Because some of the ideas of short courses, how they can be online, how they can reach a lot of people, it requires us to have seed funding to be able to put it out there. So that probably is one of the challenges. To add to that is the staff already, who are already trained in terms of teaching. So when you load again on short courses, it becomes very difficult. We've always encouraged staff to develop short courses that can really fill the gap of some of the people who need these courses. But they don't have the time to do that. So it is quite difficult, but the encouragement is there for us to take that route.
Let's get the audience involved in now. Are there any comments so far, and any questions, comments? I'm sure the students somewhere in the back must be burning to ask something. So could you perhaps this, and then we'll come back to the panel to close this off. But
hello, I'm Samwin, and I'm a student at the University of Technology. I just have a question about the transformation from diploma to degree. I'd like to know why. Why are the diploma programs being transformed so drastically? Like, UJ is changing their program from BTech to a formal degree. And then other universities of technology are also following that same type of concept. So I have a fear of becoming redundant and less marketable to the industry as a result of this. And the industry is perceiving the universities as being poorly managed and producing poorly educated graduates as a result of these transformations. So my question is, like, where does this leave us with diplomas and BTechs? In, like, yeah, if anyone could answer that question.
Okay, you can take the gentleman here.
Thank you. My name's Randall Gorter from Basil Reed. Question I have for the tertiary institutions is particularly on the civil side, on the engineering side, the focus of the QS graduate programs and so on seems to us to be focused on the building industry as such, with very little cross-pollination or input on the engineering requirements. We have graduates who know nothing about the way civil engineering bills are specified and measured and so forth, which I think is a challenge to the academic side.
My name is Mark Parker. My question is, how many of those of you lecturing or panelists here have spent more than 5 years directly involved with construction management? That means being involved with actual projects. So I'm getting the feeling, particularly what you're saying to me, to be a lecturer, I must have a PhD. The best lecturers taught me my construction management were people who had spent 10, 15 years in the direct process of managing construction projects, came in it's a part-time approach, gave us insight to the actual site and what is happening on the project.
I'm lucky to say I had 10 years in industry. I worked for client organisations, I worked for a consultancy, but I was trained as a building surveyor rather than a construction manager, so it's slightly different for me. Attracting people, the reality of the PhD and all that sort of stuff is just a fact of the incentives that the government has put in place around universities. We are just responding to those incentives. And I'm afraid that's the pressure and the reality of it. We are trying to bring in a new generation of academics, and what's interesting amongst those is that most of them, three of the four, are all in their mid to late 30s and have all got quite established in their own professions and are bringing with them a wealth of experience. Lungi is a good example of that. She's now looking away and shaking her head. But they are able to go in. The reality is you need a balance. But it's very, very difficult to attract those sorts of people. And there's another issue, which is actually you have the danger of bringing in practitioners, which sounds great, but okay, put a practitioner in front of 200 people and tell them, okay, design the assessment, design that sort of thing, make sure you achieve those learning outcomes. They have had no training in it, they have no pedagogical background in it, you are setting the students up for failure, you're setting the lecturer up to failure. The fact of the matter is how we teach is changing dramatically. It's quite comfortable to put a practitioner in front of 20 people and you will get a meaningful learning engagement out of that. Put them in front of 200, 250 people, it's not going to happen.
Let me maybe try to tackle the first question about the transformation. The differences or the changes that are happening within the universities in changing curriculum. My view is that there's no need for fear because the BTech program, diploma, have been recognized by the universities and also by the Department of Higher Education. So it is relevant. The only difference is that because of the changes that have been sort of started by the Department of Higher Education, which has asked the universities to look at the BTech again and see whether it can be transformed. And that, as a university, we need to follow the policies of the government. And I'm not seeing a situation where, for example, if the bachelor's program that is being developed in quite a number of universities, it is not going to change in terms of the culture of the institution. For instance, if I take TUT, we are moving towards a bachelor's program that will maintain the practical training in that process. So it's not going to be the same as, for example, what you find at FITS or UCT. We maintain our culture of industry involvement and practical training for our students. Now, what probably may happen is that because these are different NQF levels, for one to move maybe to honors, you probably may be required to take maybe a few courses or one or two courses to meet the threshold for into honors program. Say, for example, if you're coming from a BTech background. Okay, let me try the question on the civil engineering and peers training. Yes. Of course, I think the quantity surveying, and I don't want to talk about quantity surveying, but let me just say that the training at construction management has got a component of civil engineering. You find that in most of universities, they have got a component for civil engineering where you study structures, concrete design, and so on. But that is only for elementary purposes because you are not supposed to bring in too much civil engineering because that is the role of the civil engineers. But at least the most important thing is for the construction manager to appreciate when dealing with the civil engineering issues. And of course, I mean, there is room for improvement where perhaps we could look at other aspects of civil engineering so that we can revamp the program.
Several bulls of quantities. The third question, Michelle Allen and Rob Jardine, who's obviously the gentlemen know who they are. They employ a lot of our diploma students, but we only teach these civil bulls at the BTEC level. It's part of quantities going 4. And that's where we cover most of the civil works and bulls and the standard system of measurement, 7th edition. And of course the culture and their documents. We teach those stuff at 4th year levels. And I know a lot of our students are employed by Basil Reed, and they take on diplomas and they give them experiential training. I don't know about our BTECs. I don't think we have any BTECs employed with Basil Reed.
I will take the question for the diminishing of the technicians in the industry. This is my field, unfortunately. The industry needed artisans, and artisans are produced in the colleges. That is the FATs. The technicians are produced in the universities of technologies. The traditional universities are supposed to produce professionals. The work of the technician will always be there in the industry. That's what is changing now. What is the government changing? It is saying the student that comes from the university after the first year must go and look for the place for training. But the government now is saying, don't let the student go and look for training. Get the training for the student, you as the university. Then the universities are running away from that. They're saying we are letting off of the work, that is work integrated learning. We will not do it anymore. What Sisulu says, we are not afraid to take that responsibility. If the student was able to take it, we are going to take it for them. We are going to train the technicians. The work of the technicians will always be there, and we will forever produce technicians. Thank you.
I'm going to take the last batch of questions so that we can break for lunch before 1 o'clock, definitely. So we just have 3 more, and then.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Victor from the Master Builders in Durban. Listening to the academic institutions during your first talks, one gets a feel that there's a completely different approach that each one is following in terms of the recurriculation. We understand that there's a difference between the university and the University of Technology, and we expect the outcome there to be different. But when one hears that the universities of technology are following a different approach, then it brings a bit of concern. And I want to just explain the following. I was recently involved in developing some qualifications for artisans. And one of the requirements is that there needed to be national stakeholder consultation, or else that qualification would not be accepted. So the question to the institutions of higher learning is that, how then do you come up with your curriculum if there are such great differences where the one is convinced that workplace integration is so important and the other feels that it is not? Thank you.
Delina Atterbury, I just have 2 questions from the panel. Can they please answer whether a construction manager should be able to do temporary structure design competently? And the second is, do you teach OHS? Do you teach them the construction regulations and the Act and those studies? Thank you.
Any last? If the universities are finding funding difficult to come by for R&D, is it worth looking at themselves and saying, what is it we offer in research and development to the industry? Because if you're a centre of excellence for R&D, does anyone know that? And maybe you even need to think about what you offer in research, and because the South African standards are so unique to South Africa, do you need to test at a more international standard and then become a centre of excellence and team up with other institutions in Europe, around the world, where their cost base is higher, and do some shared research, and it's a win-win?
Okay, let's take this. Any responses to these questions? Chris?
Okay, regarding the approach, Victor, that you asked about, I think it comes really down to where the universities see their niche. So, because we have separate departments, so we have construction management, and then we have building and human settlements. The building and human settlements recurriculation didn't go the bachelor's route, because we already have a bachelor's in construction management. So the focus was more on pretty much staying with what we've got. So we're still going to stick with the diploma. The BTEC will fall away, but in essence, it becomes an advanced diploma, and it's not really that different in terms of the offering that we're putting forward. In terms of, so we now have, a diploma, advanced diploma, and we have the BSc. Now, I think some of the other institutions, and they can possibly answer to this, they don't have those two different streams, so their focus has changed. And that's part of the thinking in terms of, how you go out there to sell yourself, because we're all trying to attract the same students. So if we're offering slightly different things, then potentially it's actually better for the industry. We're filling different niches. Just on the CM side of things, temporary structure design, that's more of a structural engineering requirement. We do lecture on it, but we would never expect our CM graduates to actually be able to design that temporary structure. They should be able, however, be able to review the design of that structure, and that's something different. On the occupational health and safety, obviously we have Professor Smallwood, so definitely trying to bring it in across various disciplines and even into the architecture department. So there's a big focus there in terms of OHS. And in terms of the research, we already have a centre of excellence. It's called the Built Environment Research Centre. But can we go and get people to go and put money into it? And we have got good research from out of that research centre, which was developed through CIDB. It's very, very difficult finding those private sector individuals to come and actually put their money down and put it into specific research through that centre.
I think Chris has more or less covered what I was going to say. For the CM guys, they are not expected to only design the temporary work, but they are able to review it, they are able to interpret the drawings. And for the HRS, I think almost every program that I know of, I've got health and safety. The percentage might differ depending on the expertise in the institution. The John factor perhaps has spilled over to a lot of the institutions. So HRS is a strong focus in construction management subject, especially in third year and fourth year level.
Okay. Just to mention a bit the R&D, I think in most institutions which have what you call rated researchers, knowing, of course, the NRF has got a very rigorous process of rating researchers in different universities. I think when you've got somebody who has been rated, I think their the quality of the research that they produce is perceived to be of high standard or high quality research. And I think the challenge is how this has been, for example, marketed locally and internationally, so that these people who are rated can perhaps reach a worldwide kind of outreach rather than being a local, just focusing on local issues.
Thank you. I think I'd like to draw this panel discussion to a close now. You've seen the faces of the ladies and gentlemen who are responsible for producing our talent in the future. So please, is that a question?
Is there room for one more burning question?
Okay, go for it.
And both the council member can be allowed, no?
Yes, but they will have to keep it brief. Huh?
They are both council.
The last word in. Just the panel, from a health and safety perspective, again, to follow on what my colleague said over there, one of the biggest issues we have is undergraduate programs, or rather the lack thereof. So, you know, we've seen many of the institutions, and many of you do have programs within your curricula that covers postgraduate studies, which means that essentially to get into those programs is actually quite a difficult issue for somebody coming from a non-construction background who wants to have some kind of construction training to, you know, to better fit into the sector and to relate more to the work that needs to be done. So really, I suppose it's more of a comment, is that we really would like to see undergraduate programs of every level, from, you know, diploma, certificate, and you know, degree programs. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. I just have a question arising from the visits that we undertake to institutions, whether to promote some program of the SACP-CMP. And I'd just like to find out how true is it that when we ask students, for example, that why they choose a particular stream between quantity surveying and construction management, that they tell us that it's because they're influenced mainly by their lecturers. So what I'm asking is it true that then part of the decline that we've noticed over the years in CM graduates is attributable to lecturers specifically and actively promoting the QS profession more than the CM profession? We ask students all the time that question, like, do it at UCT, I've done it at WITS, WSU, DUT, MUT, except perhaps at NMMU. So I'm not saying my sample is representative, but I ask that question all the time, and I get the same answer.
Thank you. That question is a bit spot on, but it's not about lecturers deliberately doing it. It's about leadership. When I moved to Bloom, the QS in my department was very, very strong. But if you have leadership coming on, there's a CM, and showing good example that students want to emulate. You don't really have to go and speak to them, because you say, okay, I want to become like this. I want to become like that. Then, inadvertently, they change their minds, naturally. And we have seen that our CM cohort in the last 3 years in CUT have increased. And we see a bit worrisome, because we noted for QS. So now we are playing a balancing act in the department. So it's not about, it's about the quality of leadership in a particular discipline. So if you have got two disciplines side by side in the department, which I think Dave can relate to very well, you need to ensure that the people anchoring those disciplines are people that they are role models in the discipline. Dave?
Okay, I'll be the force now.
historically, we've always seen pretty much a 2/3, 1/3 split, 2/3 quantity surveying, 1/3 at honours level, and that hasn't changed over time. What we have noticed is significantly, or what we're told by the QS Council, is that most of our quantity surveying students do not necessarily go on to become registered quantity surveyors. That's only about 25%. Now, reasons for that are multiple. They are going to contracting organisations, they're going to clients, they're going to other forms of consultancy. And if you look at our postgrad project management and construction, the numbers for that is increased dramatically. So there isn't necessarily a desire for people wanting to be quantity surveyors, but the quantity surveying qualification does carry a higher status with the students, and that is a reality. And whilst we talk about that, the actual qualification is what they want to do, and they want to say, okay, I have a QS honours degree, okay? And rather than a CM. Having said that, what we're seeing now increasingly is, particularly on the back of things like building information modelling and various other things, people are getting much more excited about management of the construction process, and nobody wants to measure, because they also recognise that that's actually an activity that's going to be automated very quickly.
Sorry, let me just come from, because we are obviously a standalone construction management program, but we also wanted to know how students were choosing between us and our QS department, which is upstairs. And although we haven't done a formal study yet, we are looking into it, but generally the commentary that has come back is, one, it's much easier to get a QS degree than a CM degree. There's a lot more required of the CM students. It's a harder degree to get. And when they finish and they both have a degree, they can pretty much both go and work in the same place, and a lot of the time they're actually being hired for the same job, even though they've got different degrees. And maybe that's something on behalf of the employers who don't actually understand the differences between some of them in terms of the courses that they're doing, and say the lack of management courses for the QS students. So there's two alternatives to our erstwhile colleagues' assertions that potentially people are being pushed in one direction or another. They may actually be making that choice themselves.
Okay, I'd like to thank our panel. You have to agree that they've been very insightful. And please engage with them after this. You can put names to faces. So please engage with them if you have any other questions on academic institutions and the production of our students.
The University of Johannesburg. Rethink, reinvent.